What if I told you that a chunk of the money you're spending on ads right now is going straight to a black hole? Not to your dream clients, not even to real people, not to Meta or Google, just bots, fake clicks, and fraud. The platforms aren't exactly reaching to tell you this, so you probably aren't even aware of it. But if you've ever stared at your ad dashboard thinking, I'm getting clicks, so why is nobody buying? Then this episode is for you. Now, I want to be 100% real with you. There are a lot of moving parts for an ad to perform well. The headline, the creative, the audience, the landing page, and of course, your offer, they all need to be aligned to get peak performance from an ad. And we would all like to think it's an outside force when it's not working. But sometimes when an ad doesn't convert the way we expect, the answer might not be your offer. It might not be your copy or anything that's on the creative side of it. It might be that a portion of your traffic was never a real person to begin with. Today, I'm talking with Rich Kahn, the co-founder and CEO of Anura.io, which is an ad fraud detection platform that helps businesses find and eliminate the bots, the fake clicks, and the junk traffic that are quietly draining your marketing budget. Rich has 31 years in digital marketing and he's bootstrapped 5 multi-million-dollar companies. So he knows what he's talking about here. And in 2023 alone, his platform identified over 1.2 billion in fraud for clients. That's billion with a B. So we're breaking down what ad fraud actually looks like for us as small business owners, how to spot it in your own data, and what you can do about it, even if you're working with a tight budget. So let's get into it. So give me a real scenario. Now, not just numbers, but tell me a story about what fraud looks like for a small business.
Okay. Well, I've got a story. It's a mid-sized business,
Sure.
but this is kind of where it's at. I met these people a couple of years prior to working together. And it's because I was working with one of their VPs of marketing. We served on the board together in the lead generation space, which was more like performance marketing. And I'm like, hey, you're buying a lot of media. You should probably take a look at our tool, get a free traffic quality audit. Let's see what you're dealing with. And no, they weren't seeing anything, right? Because they didn't know the signs to look for. It's not like the average person wakes up in the morning and says, I need a fraud solution, right? They don't do that
Right.
because most people don't realize that a lot of the problems that exist in marketing space right now start with a fraud problem at the top of the funnel, right? It's
Mm.
interfering. So if you think, and let me just paint a picture for your audience. Last year, as a global society in digital marketing, we spent $750 billion. Based on our conservative estimates, we're estimating that 165 billion was stolen by fraud.
Wow.
So it's no longer a question of if you have fraud, it's a question of how much fraud are you dealing with. And the problem is most people, so that comes out to about 22%. We on average typically find, when we do a traffic quality audit, we typically find the average person is 25% fraud. And really what it depends on is where you're buying your traffic. You're buying it from search, social, programmatic, affiliate. It depends on each channel has different layers of fraud. So anyway, we were talking to this company and for years, they didn't recognize that they had a fraud problem because they didn't know what to look for. Then it became very obvious. They lost two major clients. And the reason why they knew it was fraud is because the client said, we're leaving you because you have fraud on your network. And it was smack in the face. You got a problem. So I happened to just be my normal reach out every quarter, reaching out, just say, hey, maybe we can get in front. And it was like perfect timing because it happened that same week. And the gentleman got back to me and said, yeah, I think we have a fraud problem. We just lost two clients. I'm hearing rumblings from my team that there's other issues going on. Can we run that traffic quality audit? Absolutely. Let's run the traffic quality audit. We run the audit. Find out that 65% of the traffic that we scanned was fraudulent.
Wow.
So let me backtrack in a second. I'm just trying to give you guys a little bit more insight. Okay. So if you had less than 5% fraud, it pretty much goes unnoticed. It's still eating your budget, but it's hard to identify that because it's such a small percentage of your overall volume. It is what it is. Once you break 10%, you start to notice the ROAS is starting to fall. Things are not right. You're getting leads and you're calling them and they don't answer. Or when you get them on the phone, that they tell you that I didn't fill out your form. You're starting to see some signs. Maybe you have a lot of traffic and low conversions. Maybe you have some weird site behavior if you're tracking that using like a hot jar or something like that. You start to see those signs. Once it breaks 20%, the sky is falling. You know there's a problem. You just don't necessarily know it's fraud, but these are the signs that you look at. That's when you got to ask yourself, I might have a fraud problem. I should do some research and figure out what's going on. That's what it looks like.
Okay. Interesting. So, how did you get into this industry? I would imagine you, as a kid, didn't say, I want to ferret out fraud. Like, tell me how you got involved in it. How did you figure out that this was a marketable problem that people were having?
So it's funny you ask because I was actually, when I decided to do this, I actually told my partner that I don't want to be the guy solving fraud. It was not because I knew how difficult it was and how much work and time it takes. So anyway, go back. My wife and I started a digital marketing ad network. So think of Google, but really small, right? We started in 2003, launched it, and we had clients loving it because the traffic was very inexpensive, but had good conversion value. So even though we didn't have a lot of traffic, people would buy. We even had clients come to us and say, look, you get first crack at my budget. Can you spend X? And we would do some estimates and say yay or nay. And they would allocate their budget to us first before they went to Google or Facebook, because obviously Facebook wasn't out then, but in 2003, Google was out, and Google's traffic very expensive, right? So they would come to us first and try to get their budget, as much as budget as we can absorb, and then they had to spend the rest of the budget elsewhere. 2004, late 2004, all of a sudden we started hearing grumblings from our clients that, hey, something's going on. The conversions are not the same. We started hearing those little telltale signs that it might be a fraud problem. So I started looking at it. I'm a developer. I actually wrote my first game when I was 9. I got published when I was 12. So I've been doing this for decades. And
Mhm.
I looked at it and I'm like, you know what? I've seen this before. It's fraud. And that's when I turned to my partner and said, look, I don't want to be the guy solving fraud. Let's just go out, license a solution, bolt it onto our platform, and go about our day. And in 2004, 2005, nothing existed. In fact, the first commercially available fraud solution didn't come out until 2008 or 9. So I said, we can either close up shop or we can solve the problem. And I said, you know what? Challenge accepted. I can do this myself. So I sat down, I wrote the code. I think I did it in a weekend. It was really unique way of looking at the data and solve the problem that day. And then, of course, fraud evolves over time. So I had to
Right.
continue evolving the code and staying on top of it. Then I eventually hired a team to start taking over and working on it. And then about 10 years down the road, somebody turned, one of our, actually several of our clients were asking, they loved our traffic quality. They knew we had a fraud solution that we had built, and they wanted to license that fraud solution for other channels because they were seeing fraud in other channels or things that look like fraud in other channels. And we're like, I don't know if I want to build another platform. It's a lot of work because I'm only supporting it for myself. I'm the only customer. I'm the only one who's going to complain about issues. But now if I start opening this up, I'm going to have a lot more people asking for features that I may not have in there now, or asking for new stuff. And it's going to create a whole new business model. And so we said, you know what, let's test one client. And what was interesting about this client is he was just doing organic traffic. He was doing content marketing, driving organic traffic. And the people that were advertising on his website were complaining about fraudulent traffic. And he's like, it's organic. Nobody's paid. Like, I don't understand.
Hmm.
So we jerry rigged it, put it on his site to see if it would work. And as a test case, it worked great. We found 30% fraud on his site with organic traffic.
Huh.
So it's kind of interesting. And we decided, you know what? This looks like this could be something different. So first thing we did was I spent 6 figures of my own money and I tested that solution, the solution we had built, against 3 market leaders that were in the space. We had access to their code because clients were using their system. So we were able to test it against their code. And we found out that when performance was on the line, accuracy and thoroughness were on the line, we stood out. We were definitely the clear winner. And we ran 3 different independent tests that year. That year is 2015. And we actually have a report, a white paper on that on our website called the Year in Review of Ad Fraud. And it was 2015 where we ran all these tests. So we decided, you know what, we definitely have something that's worth bringing to market. So we spent 2016 working on it. And April 1st of 2017, we launched Anura as a standalone fraud solution. So that's how I got to where
Right.
I am now.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really unfortunate that that is such an issue. And we'll talk more about like organic versus paid in just a minute here. But is this something, a lot of my listeners are small businesses, like really small, solopreneur or just startups. Is this really a big company problem, or is this something that's across the board that
It-
can affect anybody?
It's across the board. Fraudsters steal from everybody equally. Assuming they're buying on Google and Facebook, those tend to be the lower percentages of fraud in the industry, right? And that's usually where people start because of the bigger companies. And generally speaking, that has around 10% fraud inherently. So it's still eating your budget. But I'll give you guys a hint. If you're going to start off on Google and stay there initially, when you set up your campaign, you got to go through all the details. And I keep forgetting where they move it. They keep moving it around. But there's a little checkbox. By default, it's checked. And it said include partner networks,
Yeah. Hmm.
right? So that this way, because 90% of the traffic you get when you buy from Google doesn't come from google.com. It comes from their partner network. And in that partner network, there's name brand companies that you know and seen, but there's also tens of thousands of websites you've never heard of before. And that is where a lot of the fraud tends to come from because they're getting paid to drive traffic. And of course, when you incentivize somebody to do something, cheaters find a way to cheat. So
Yeah.
when your campaigns are small, you can get away with doing this little trick. Just uncheck that box. So this way, 100% of the traffic you're buying from Google comes from google.com. And obviously, google.com has no desire to commit fraud. There'll be a maybe 2% fraud. It's minimal. It's something that you can live with, but it shaves off the lion's share. But once your campaign gets to a certain point, you're not going to be able to get your budget spent. You're going to have to open it up and open the network up. And then that's when you start needing tools like an Anura to help you identify where the fraud is and eliminate it from your campaigns.
Gotcha. That's true in meta ads too, right? They do have their third party platforms that they will ask you about.
Up to this point, I've been saying no, right? Because Facebook generates all their traffic from their user base.
Okay.
However, when I'm on stage and I ask the room full of people, how many people think Facebook has fake profiles? Everybody raises their hand.
Mm.
We all know it. They talk
Yeah.
about it. Facebook is very open about they're trying to shut them down. But yet, if you ever take a look at, I don't know if people are familiar with Fiverr, a great place for
Mm.
little things that you can get done. Look up buying likes, Facebook likes. You can buy,
Yeah.
10,000 Facebook likes for like $100. You know, those aren't real profiles. So what happens is fraudsters put fake profiles on Facebook to make money indirectly off of Facebook by basically using it for other activities like buying likes, selling likes on people's pages. But to keep those fake profiles alive, they have to make them look like real people, right? They have to interact
Right.
with ads. They have to
Yeah. Yeah.
interact with people's content, like things, comment things. They have to do the stuff that a real person does so they avoid getting shut down. And that's where their fraud comes from.
Okay. Okay. So what's the difference between a bot, click fraud, invalid traffic? Is this all the same thing? Or are
Just
these
different,
three different?
yeah,
Okay.
different names. So the industry term, because nobody likes the word fraud, is invalid traffic,
Okay.
IVT, right? Understanding invalid traffic, there's two classifications of invalid traffic. So you've got, and it's all IVT. So you got GIVT, which is general invalid traffic. This is the type of traffic that's hosted by data centers, well-known bot IP addresses, things like that. And then you have SIVT, which is where the lion's share of the fraud comes from. It's called sophisticated invalid traffic. These are your AI bots, installed software on your machine like that have malware integrated in them, or
Mhm.
human fraud forms, click forms that people pay money to these places to commit fraud, but using a human. So they get past the captures, they get past bot detection because they're real people.
Yeah.
I always say the three vehicles typically used to commit fraud is bots, malware, and human fraud. There might be some others in there, but they all kind of fall into those one of three categories.
What's a sign that fraud is actually eating your ad budget? Because I know that I have personally, I've run ads that I feel like that nothing converted or it didn't convert like I wanted it to. And I've seen this with clients as well, but it's hard to know whether or not it's fraud, if it's your landing page, it's your messaging's off, your creative's off. So how is it that we know that it's fraud? Is it the percentage of, well, I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, without scanning the traffic, it's hard to know, right? Because there's many reasons why a campaign won't perform.
Yeah.
Ad creative, messaging, targeting, all that comes into play as if the campaign is going to convert. But let's say you built a campaign and it's converting. So you got the messaging's right, the targeting's right, creatives are right, and everything's working well. You do have stuff called ad fatigue, where the ads stop producing results because people have seen them and they just like them out. So you got to constantly keep fresh ads going and different things like that. But if you take the campaign, you put it there, and all of a sudden you start to see a sudden drop in traffic on a relatively new ad creative, could be a sign of fraud. The only way to know for sure if it's fraud or not is you really have to have a tool to scan it and identify, is this fraud or is it real people? If it's real people, then okay, I can forget fraud. I can now focus on ad creatives and targeting and all the other stuff that has to go with it. I'll give you an example. I had a university it's a client of ours. They were buying traffic and they had an ad agency handling all the traffic for them just so they didn't have to deal with it. And I think they suspected that there was a problem going on because they called us up, didn't tell us that they had an ad agency, tested our software, loved it, signed up, became a client. And then they said, oh, by the way, all of our campaigns are being controlled by an ad agency. We'd like to get you guys on the phone together because one of the sources is showing 90% fraud. And we've been complaining about that source. And now we know it's fraud. So we get the ad agency on the phone. And long story short, what happened was the ad agency has been looking at certain KPIs, so key performance indicators, that told them the traffic was doing well or not. And it wasn't based on a real conversion, like somebody making a purchase, somebody filling in a form and confirming it was a real person. It was something that was easy at the time for a fraudster to manipulate, like click-through rate. And I think that was one of their KPIs was the click-through rate. How many ads are they showing versus how many people clicking on the ad? And let's say the average is a 0.5% click-through ratio. What they were doing is, wow, we have some sources coming in that are performing at 0.7, 0.8, like on the higher side. Let's manage the campaign to that KPI. So what happened was those KPIs were being designed by fraudsters. So now what's happening is they're adjusting their campaign stats around attracting more fraud without them knowing about it. So
Right.
they were making good decisions, but they were making good decisions based on bad data, which gives you a bad outcome. So it got to the point where, the ad agency's like, are you kidding me? The KPIs are through the roof. Everything's great. How could it be fraud? You're wrong. And we said, okay, just for fun, let's remove that source, shut that source off, take that budget, move it to the other campaigns that have better quality traffic. And let's see what happens with the back end conversion data, the stuff that the client really cares about. And as soon as they did that, clients saw a spike in ROI. It was clear as day that our data was accurate, telling them what was going on. And now the agency is listening to us. So now we're saying, okay, let's bring the source back in. Let's optimize it around good data. And let's get that under control so that the client could use that as a good source of data.
That's really interesting. So if somebody's running, let's say some paid ads on the tight budget and they can afford to probably work with you at this point,
Mhm.
what are two or three things that they could do now to protect themselves?
First off, one of the things I would do is if it's a tight budget, I'd probably stick with Google
Okay.
or Facebook. All right. Those two are going to have your lower levels of fraud. And again, if you could do Google, use the little trick that I said is uncheck the
Yeah.
box for the partner network so you can really tighten up that fraud. Start there. Next thing is pay close attention to the back end conversion. Again, every campaign out there is designed to produce some real conversion. So maybe somebody's selling a product or a service and they're generating a lead, right? So if the lead is generated, call to confirm the lead is accurate. If it's a fraudulent lead, you're going to know because the person's going to probably not answer the phone, or you're going to get them on the phone. They're going to swear up and down they didn't fill out the form, or they don't know who you are. But you got to be careful because if you called somebody who didn't give you expressed written consent to call them, you're breaking TCPA compliance. You could be
Okay.
sued for that.
Huh.
In fact, that's the largest growing class action lawsuit in this country.
Really interesting. So bots can fill out forms
Sure.
for not just for maybe a free call, but they can also fill out a form for a webinar or any other kind of form that you have.
Yep.
Correct.
The
Okay.
webinar, they can sign up for a demo, they can sign up for anything that lead form, and they can use my information. The bot can just go to a database, which the data is readily available out on the internet for free. They can look up my name, look at the email address, look at the phone number. They have all that information, fill out the form. Heck, I've seen bots that type and they'll type out Richard. And as they're typing out Richard, they make a mistake. They delete the character. So they make it look like it's because sometimes people are looking at the screen videos and they're watching it in real time to see how it's being filled out. And it says, oh, that looks like a real person. Meanwhile, it's
Uh,
not Rich Kahn filling out the form. It's some bot filling out that form. So you got to watch for all these things. But if you start getting those leads where they're not real leads, you know that you're having an issue with fraud. You can link it back to maybe the campaign creative, the keyword, depending on the targeting criteria. A lot of these platforms, especially Google and Facebook, have extreme targeting criteria. And you can dig into that and you can start to optimize a little bit around that. It's a lot of work, but again, this is my fifth multi-million dollar web property that I bootstrap. So I understand tight budgets. I've been tight budgeting my whole career, bootstrapping. So I get it. In the beginning, you work 90 hours a week and you just do what you got to do to get it up and running. And then once you start making some money, then you can start hiring people to help out with the work, right? But in the
right.
beginning,
Right.
as a solopreneur, it's 100% on you.
how often does or how easily can we spot this on like Google Analytics? Oftentimes we'll look at where our source data is and we can see or sites that we've never heard of, you know?
Yeah. Again, if you're on Google, you're basically, and again, let's say you're buying Google and a partner networks. Really, what the targeting criteria that you have control over is really going to be the campaign, the ad group, the actual ad itself, the ad creative, the ad listing, the keyword that it came in on. Because when I first built this, we were actually managing Google campaigns for clients also as one of our things. So I might have a client that had 100 keywords that I'm managing, and it would watch the keywords. And if it saw a keyword had a high level of fraud, it would just stop bidding on that keyword. It would back off on that keyword, let the budget go elsewhere. So same thing, if you have some back end conversion analytics, you're not going to see it on Google Analytics. It just doesn't show up there because it looks real. Remember,
Right.
bots are designed to make traffic look real. So it's really not going to show up there. But when you get the back end conversions, say, wow, it came from this campaign, this ad group, this ad listing, this creative, this keyword, you can go back. And if you get a couple of those leads coming in from that same grouping, then you can say, hey, maybe I may shut that keyword off. Maybe shut that ad group off. And you can start to do some optimization that way to try to get things down. But that's, again, difficult nowadays. So like when you're spending there, like I said, the single easiest trick is uncheck that box. Try to keep your budget to Google and Facebook. It'll get you the lower slot. Because I'll give you an example. Everybody sees banners all over the place, video ads all over the place, right? Those are sold at a real-time bidding environment.
Hmm.
So you typically buy those through DSPs. Google has their own DSP, which is a demand side platform. So if you're buying display units, those average 50% fraud. But if you have a tight budget, stay away from that.
50%. Wow.
Yes,
Wow.
focus on Google and Facebook because that's going to be around 10%. It still sucks to have to spend the 10% on fraud,
Yeah.
but on the Google side, at least you can pull back on that little checkbox and really get it down and try to focus on ad creatives, ad fatigue, keyword purchases, and targeting, all that stuff you can focus on, which is what you traditionally have to focus on once fraud's out of the way.
Right. Right. Do you think that AI is making everything so much worse? Or
Oh,
is it
yeah.
okay?
I'll give you a quick story on that. Last year, tail end of last year, a new AI assisted bot came out. And it was so advanced, it got around all fraud solutions in the marketplace. So it was so bad. I had one of actually my CRO was at a trade show, an affiliate trade show in Bangkok. And he found two companies with booths at the show selling fraudulent traffic that gets around all fraud vendors. That's how
uh,
blatant they are.
oh,
And again, this is overseas, so they do what they want to do.
yeah.
Thankfully, once we identified it, we quickly put together a solution to solve it. Took a minute to get it done, but once we got it launched, we are able to confirm that it's been blocking all that new AI stuff. But again, and then we designed the way the new design came out for our system. We believe we're going to be protected for years to come based on how AI works and everything else. But it's something that you got to watch out for because AI, bots back in the day would just basically move the mouse perfectly straight and it was easy to
Mm.
catch if you're running videos and stuff like that. AI assisted bots, they're almost impossible to identify
Hmm. And they just keep getting smarter and smarter.
quickly.
Yeah. Huh. So you have a tool, right, that business owners can test whether or not they have a fraud problem?
Yeah. So our whole thing is I'm a developer. So my goal is if I want to work with you, I don't want to just take your money. I want to know that you have a problem that our software can solve. If we do, then I'm happy to take your money and solve your problem for you. First thing we do for everybody, we do is a traffic quality audit. It basically, there's no credit card involved. There's no commitment at all. It's just, hey, let's find out. Let's look at the data and see how big of a fraud problem you have. Once we identify the fraud problem during that audit, we also tell you where it's coming from. And then the goal is, okay, how do we mitigate this effectively and efficiently to reduce or eliminate the fraud as much as possible using our software?
And that is on your website, I would assume? Is that
Yeah.
something
So
that people can access? Yeah. Okay.
yeah. If people go to our site, Anura.io, there's a little green button up there. It says either talk to an expert or a traffic quality audit. Click that. You fill out a little form. We'll get in touch with you. The first thing we want to do is find out, okay, where are you buying from? How many visitors a month are you driving? What kind of issues are you running into? Because usually when someone clicks that button and they want a traffic quality audit, something's going on. They
Yeah.
suspect something. It very rare is it someone just saying, well, I'm just curious. It usually doesn't happen. Usually, you know what? I had a problem. Things were working great. Now they're not. I had an issue. I'm managing traffic for a client. All of a sudden they're having a problem. Something happened to trigger because My CRO says this all the time. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, you know what? I need a fraud solution. That just doesn't happen.
Right. Right.
9 times
Right.
out of 10, they have a fraud problem. They don't even know it's a fraud problem. So having them look up and research on the internet or through AI what problem they're having and how to solve it. So we do a lot of content writing. So if they're just looking for educational information, we have over 300 blogs on our site. We're putting out blogs every week. We have
Hmm.
dozens of ebooks. We have the internet's only ultimate guide to ad fraud. It's like an 80-page ebook that talks about all kinds of fraud in all different channels and how it works and things you can do to try to minimize it on your own. So tons of resources. We even have a YouTube channel where I'm on podcasts like this. I did 3 this week. So, I mean, you get invited because it's a topic that a lot of people don't talk about. A lot
Hmm.
of people don't know it's an interesting topic because people are
Hmm.
curious. Hey, if I can solve that problem and it fixes my ROI problem or my ROAS problem, makes my
Yeah.
life easier, right? Otherwise, they're running
Absolutely.
around chasing their tail trying to solve a problem that they don't realize the way they're trying to solve it's not going to solve it.
Yeah. Yeah. So where can people find out more about you?
So 2 things, Anura.io. So it's spelled Anura.io. I'm sure that'll be in the show notes.
Hmm.
So they'll be able to click on that, go there. That's beautiful information. It's more resources than any other solution I've seen out there when it comes to just talking about fraud so they can understand it. We've got a glossary and all kinds of,
Yeah.
we've actually got a fraud calculator. So you can actually put in, check off all the different places you're buying traffic from and hit submit. And it will actually give you an estimate based on those sources of how much fraud you
Ah,
have. That's a free resource that's there, which is great. In addition to that, Rich Kahn, IAHN on LinkedIn. I'm all over LinkedIn. I'm posting 6, 7, 8 times a week, just little snippets, Q&As and things like that, talking about fraud and putting out resources that we constantly put out there. So easy to find, easy to get more information, light touch. Basically, you can learn as much as you want without having to talk to anybody. When you're ready to talk to somebody, we're here, but our goal is to educate the audience so that they know what's going on. They know some of the signs and symptoms to look for. So when it does happen and they need a fraud solution, they know who to call.
perfect. Yes, I will second that. Your website is extremely valuable in terms of content. Your blog posts are in depth, they're easy to understand. And I learned a ton just by going there that more than I wanted to, because I'd like to just pretend that this doesn't happen
Yeah.
and that all my money is going to the right place. But I know that that's not the truth in this world. So
Yep.
thank you so much, Rich. I totally enjoyed this. And I think we're all a little smarter now because of it. So thanks
Pre-
for being here today.
Appreciate you having me on today.